My grandparents tried to disown me simply because I'm not biologically related to them. I was adopted. Well, this might come as a shock because you might be wondering where my parents are. Let me tell you the full story. Hello everyone, how are you? I'm not okay at all. I don't think my life has been worse than it is right now. At this point, I don't even think it's going to get better. It's useless to even hope for it. My parents are dead and my grandparents hate me. Let me start from the beginning. I'm adopted. My parents, Jane and Beck, adopted me when I was a baby. Maybe around 5 years old or something. My biological parents died when I was a baby, so I don't even remember much of them. However, I always thought I was lucky to be adopted by such amazing people. Jane and Beck were truly the people who changed my life for the better. They treated my life like it was, well, their own biological child, and I was incredibly happy to be adopted into this family. As a kid, I heard so many horror stories from other children about families who would adopt but then come give the child back if they weren't satisfied with how that we were acting or some other dumb reason. Others also told us how some families were super mean to children they adopt because they're not blood related. This is why when the Olsens decided to adopt me, I was terrified about my future. I would try and be on my best behavior so they would not send me back, but I realized soon enough that I did not have to try extra hard to make them like me. They were the perfect family, and now I was a part of it. Even my brother, Jake, was super nice to me. He was 4 years older than me, and after my parents had Jake, they thought that they'd be able to have another child. Unfortunately, Mom found out that she won't be able to have any babies again after Jake due to some complications with her uterus lining. They were devastated because they wanted Jake to have a sibling, and now they would not be able to have another kid. That's when they decided to go for adoption and adopted me. It was a super long procedure. I was living in their house for a few weeks before the adoption was finalized. Those weeks for me were torturous because it meant that for any wrong thing I did, they could choose to send me back without any hassle. Even though they were nice to me, the horror stories of the adoption center kept playing in my head. However, I realized that they weren't evil and I did not want the worst for me, so I started settling in with the family. Everything was going great for a few months until I had to meet my mom's parents. Since Mom was so nice to me, I thought her parents would be the same, that I would not have to worry too much about meeting them, but I slowly realized that I should have never let my guard down. My quote grandparents weren't the most welcoming towards me. They loved Jake, but they did not even prefer glancing in my direction. According to them, I was not part of the family and would never be one because I wasn't biologically related to anybody. This caused a huge fight in the family because my parents tried to explain family isn't all about blood, and they just truly see me as one of them, but the grandparents weren't having any of it. They had to come to stay at our house for the whole weekend, and that entire weekend was torturous. They'd praise Jake for every and anything that he did, but they made sure that they would just sneer at me and taunt me for actually everything. I felt like an imposter. I felt like an imposter in my own house. Well, because of them. And I don't know how I would have survived that weekend if it weren't for my parents constantly reminding me that I was part of the family, and I should ignore everything that those two were saying about me. It was hard, but I managed to do it. When they finally left, I thought I would never have to deal with them again, but it stung when they'd go overboard for Jake's birthday and never even acknowledge mine. They would praise Jake's achievements to everybody whenever they got the chance, but if anybody asked about me, they'd say I'm not part of the family. My parents, especially my mother, went through so many arguments with them because of how they were treating me, but they looked like they didn't care at all. At one point, I started to feel guilty because of how many fights I was causing, so I just went ahead to tell my parents that I did not care about what they had to say about me, so they should stop arguing with them. They were hesitant, but I can be pretty convincing when I want to. Apart from the grandparents part, my life as an Olsen was terrific. They never made me feel like I was worth less than Jake because I didn't share the same DNA. And they made sure, I knew how appreciated I was in the family. Even Jake would treat me as his sister and not like an outsider. However, all of that changed when my parents passed away in a car crash. It was a school day, so I remember saying bye to them before leaving to catch the bus. However, not even 2 hours into my classes, I got pulled out of class and was called to the principal's office. That's when we were told our parents have gotten into a car crash and unfortunately did not survive. I felt like my whole world just came crashing down. I wasn't sure how we were going to survive living without our parents. I was in my last year of high school and Jake was in his last year of college. At that point, I didn't have any idea how I was supposed to go on with my life. As it turned out, my parents left a huge fund under my name in their will to help pay for my college so I don't have to go and take out a loan. I was grateful that they thought of doing that because I knew it would be hard for me to gain an inheritance if I wasn't related to him by blood. Even more so because my grandparents hated me and I was sure that they would make life hell for me. My prediction came true. A few days later, I found out that my grandparents got the legal right to take guardianship over us. That day was when my life came to a halt. All the good things in life came to a stop, and the day that I got handed over to my grandparents, I knew that they weren't going to treat me well when I took a look into their eyes and saw pure hatred radiating out of it. They then looked at my brother, and I swear their entire posture and demeanor changed. They acted so weird about Jake and started asking him how he was holding up like he was the only one who just lost his parents. I was suffering just as much as he was, and not to undermine his pain, but I was probably going through a worse time than he was because he at least had people who wanted him around. Nobody around me wanted me to be there. Nobody expected my best friend Noah. He was the only one I relied on during this time. He knew how bad my grandparents treated me, and he knew how hard this was for me. I'm not sure I'd be mentally stable if it weren't for him. We became friends during middle school when he transferred to our school, and Noah was a very shy kid. He did not like talking to anybody, whereas I was super extroverted and knew I wanted to be his friend as soon as he walked in class, with his head held down and his cute introduction. Luck was on my side because we were also paired together as classmates at the same seat. In almost all of our classes we'd sit together. That's because I did not have a lot of friends to begin with, and even though, yes, I was extroverted, everything that's happened in my life has made me cautious about the people around me. I didn't want to get close to anyone just to get hurt by them again. However, Noah changed that perspective for me in an instant. As soon as we started talking, we knew that we'd be best friends. We hit it off instantly and talked about the most random things that there were to talk about, even though it was our first day of meeting. A few months into this being his best friend, I told him about my family and how I was adopted. I was scared he was going to look at me differently, but he did not. Instead, he understood my decision and made sure I felt and heard. When I talked about my fears and my concerns about being the adopted child, most people tend to dismiss my fears, but he never did. Oh no. Eventually, we got even more close. Now, when my parents, my biggest life support, are gone from this world, Noah was the one who motivated me to stay in it well. As the day went by, the cruel treatment from my grandparents kept getting worse. At first, it was just their actions that were hurting me. They kept making me stay on the sidelines while they treat Jake like he was an absolute prince. Even when I needed something necessary for my well-being, they would just tell me to get a job, get it for myself. According to them, their family money should not be spent on me because I was not a part of the family. Over the weeks, I started to feel detached from everybody. They would stop calling me for dinner. They'd buy Jake whatever he wanted. Everything they did, they kept Jake in mind. I didn't even exist for them anymore. It got to the point where during holidays like Halloween, Christmas, they got costumes and presents for Jake but did not get anything for me. I didn't even get a single present from them for Christmas, and my heart broke even more that day. In all of this, I expected Jake to take my side. However, my grandparents seemed to be brainwashing him as well. I don't blame him too much for his actions. I know how Jake is. He gets manipulated easily, and even though he's older than me, he's been sheltered his entire life. I had seen the real side of the world, but he had not. Even when he tried to take my side, he was terrified of being kicked out of the only place that he could call home. He didn't live in the college dorms, and he never wanted to, so I understood his view. That's not to say I wasn't mad at him or hurt by his actions, but hey, I understood. He even tried to give me a present on Christmas, but as soon as my grandparents saw me open it, they told Jake, get away. He told him off for spending his, quote, precious money on me. They told him he did not even need to worry about me anymore because I wasn't his sister. I wasn't blood related to him, so he should not feel any obligation to be nice to me. I was very hurt when I realized that Jake did nothing to defend me against them. He just sat there and watched as my grandparents made me feel like crap every single day. Then, one day, things took a turn for the worse. You see, my parents had left me a college fund to help pay the tuition. This way, I would not have to be drowning in loans and such as I went to college. They did the same with Jake, and now they're planning on doing the same with me. Well, however, once I actually started to apply to college, I found out something that made my world stop. My grandparents had taken full control of my college funds, and they weren't letting me have access to it at all. Instead, they gave it all to Jake because they said it's his money and not mine. Well, I first heard that when I was getting dinner from the kitchen after everybody had already eaten. My grandma came in and told me to stop looking into colleges because I didn't have money. I ignored her and went to my room, but I couldn't stop thinking about what she said. The next morning, I confronted her to ask her what she meant by that, and she told me that I had no money left because, as my guardian, they put the money into Jake's share. She told me that it did not seem fair to her to give me such a big amount of money if I wasn't even related biologically. Even though I shared the same last name as them, just because I wasn't blood related, they would not let me have access to the money my parents left for me. It was ridiculous, and I was fuming with anger. I went over to Jake's room and told him everything that had just happened. However, he did not seem like he could be much of help. He told me that even though he's of legal age, he doesn't want to give up on his lifestyle, and supporting me would just put him in, danger, so I should fight my own battles. That's when I realized that I had lost my brother as well. He could do so much to change my grandparents' mindset, but he wasn't doing anything at all. Instead, he was just lounging around, sitting on the money that was supposed to be for my education. For a few days, I had no idea what I would do with the situation or how I would get the money back. Then I'm not sure how, but I got the courage to confront my grandparents and let them know what they were doing wasn't right. I told them I wanted the money back and that I would do anything to get it back as well, but they just did not seem to care. Instead, they got angry at me for being angry with them, and it turned into a big fight. They started calling me ungrateful and told me that I did not even deserve to live in the house. They were only letting me stay because of legal obligations, and that's when I realized that they were threatening to kick me out of the house if I resisted too much. So, I just shut my mouth and went to my room to cry my eyes out. I'm still crying as I type this up because I don't know how I'm going to survive in this household anymore. I just hope I don't get kicked out to the streets if I decide to go to college. Update number 1. 1 week later. Hey guys, it's been almost a week since my grandparents decided to threaten me about kicking me out of the home. Since then, my life has been absolutely terrible. There wasn't one day where I was happy about staying in this house. Every time I saw their faces, I was reminded of the fact that they stole my life and my money from me. They left me with nothing, and here they were, prancing around the house with the biggest smile on their faces. As a kid, I used to think about how tough life must be for Harry Potter, especially because I was a huge fan of the series. However, I've just come to realize that I'm living the same life as him. I feel like an imposter in the house that's supposed to feel like family. I have nothing of value in this house because they stole everything from me. Life has been one bad thing on another lately, and it's been getting really hard to cope. 2 days ago, I let my best friend Noah know about the situation. I told him how my grandparents stole my college fund to give it to my brother and how I'm left with nothing. He listened to me talk for hours on end before he spoke, and he expressed his concerns about the whole situation and let me know that they were doing wasn't okay and I should talk back to them. However, I could not do that because they would just kick me out of the house and then I would have nowhere to go. I got into a little argument with Noah as well because I felt like he did not understand how deep this went for me and that if things went wrong, I'd be out on the street without anything to help me survive. Until Noah told me that I could come and stay with him. I felt a bit awkward with that because he lived with his whole family, but then he made me realize that his entire family sees me as part of the family and would never want me to go through anything like that. I was super close to his mom as well because every time I would come over, his mother and I would spend some time talking to each other and just discussing how our day went. She also knew about my entire situation and did not hesitate to tell me that she would be here if I needed help of any sort. Hearing all that made my tears prickle up in my eyes as I understood that I wasn't exactly alone and I had people around me who would support me if things went wrong. That night, I lay in bed as I tried to mentally prepare myself for the argument that was about to happen and the emotional turmoil I was about to face. There was a lot of times during that night when I wasn't sure if I wanted to go ahead and confront them. I wasn't sure if I would be able to deal with the consequences or if Noah's family would be okay with me staying with him or anything. It was all very confusing, but I knew I had to do something about it before it got worse. Anyways, their behavior towards me started being verbally abusive as well, and I wasn't comfortable living here without either telling them to fix their behavior or me leaving. The next day, when I woke up from my sleep, I knew what I had to do. I went down to the living room to see my grandparents and Jake sitting around the TV having breakfast. That's when I spit out the fact that I want all the money that my parents left me back and I want it now. As usual, this led to a fight. But when they threatened to, quote, disown me and kick me out of the house, Jake intervened and told them that it's not a big deal and he didn't necessarily need the money, but one glare aimed towards him and he sunk back into the couch. He couldn't even look me in the eyes as I grabbed my suitcase and marched outside the house. He didn't even look at me when I told him I never wanted to be associated with them in my entire life. Well, I've been staying at Noah's house since, but I don't want to keep burdening him anymore. That's why I'm currently looking into loans and jobs to help me get back on my feet at least. All I know is that I never want to be associated with this family again. Update number 2. Hey guys, it's been a year since I was kicked out of my grandparents' house, and let me tell you, life has been so good. Basically what happened was that I knew I didn't want to spend the rest of my college life living with Noah's family. I felt like I was intruding in their house, and even though they made extra sure to make me feel like I was at home, it was still hard for me to do that. Well, I wanted my own space, I wanted my own stuff. So, I applied to a few colleges, and surprisingly, Noah and I got into the same college. Through government loans and the 2 jobs that I was working, I managed to get started in college, and Noah and I bought a shared apartment for both of us to live in. He knew I wasn't really comfortable living with his family, and instead of taking to heart, he helped me look for the apartment that were in the city, but near the state college that we were going to. It helped a lot that I had his family's support as well, and yeah, not financially, then they made sure to at least have me emotionally supported. Anyways, the reason I'm updating this a year later is not to tell you guys about my better life. It's because my grandparents decided to make a surprise appearance in my life again. Even though before leaving that house, I'd very clearly mentioned that I never wanted to see them again. They still called me and showed up in my life. Apparently, they needed my help because Jack had spent all the money that was left by my parents. And most of my grandparents' pension money as well. Let me tell you guys what happened. When Jack realized in his last year of college that he had access to this huge sum of money, he could do whatever he wanted with it. He decided to go out partying, buying luxurious things, drugs, and go on vacation every other month. Basically, he did whatever he could to make sure that there was not a single penny left for anyone else out there. However, once he realized that he used up all the money and now they were left with absolutely nothing, along with the fact that his grandparents were now dependent on him as well, he got into gambling. He thought that he could get all the money that he lost back by winning these gambling matches, but fate was not on his side. Not only did he lose even more money, but he had also had to take debt from a lot of fishy people, whom he should have avoided at all costs. Not just that, Jake has also put the house up for lease to a loan shark. He keeps coming up to the house and demanding either payment or the home, and this has my grandparents extremely scared, since they're left with nothing and now they're in danger of losing their house as well. This is why they've called me and asked for help in either getting them a place to stay or paying the debt that Jake owns everyone to, so they can get out of this mess. I was mad when I heard that. They had no right to come after me and ask me for help when they didn't help me in any sort of way when I actually needed it. And it's not like I'm super rich or anything, so I don't know what they're expecting from me, but I'm not going to give them anything. That's exactly what I told them as well, but they kept insisting that I think it over and kept begging me to help them. So for now, I've told them that I'll think about it, but honestly, I'm not sure. I still have a lot of grudges against them that I hold on to. Update number 3. I wasn't done with my thinking, and I wasn't done deciding what I was going to do about this whole situation when I got a call that made me feel like I had to make a decision and I had to make one quick. So, what happened was that I was in one of my classes when I got this phone call from my grandmother, and yes, at first, I ignored it because I felt like she was just going to ask me if I've made a decision yet or not, but I wasn't ready to have that conversation again. But then, she starts calling me again. I declined it the first few times, but when she would not budge and kept redialing, I went out of the classroom and answered it. I instantly knew something was wrong when I picked up the phone. My grandma sounded way too out of breath for it to be normal, and I heard Grandpa angry screaming on the other side of the phone. As it turned out, the loan sharks got to them before I could make a decision, and told them that they had a week before they need to move out of the house, or else they would be forced out. Jake ran away from the loan shark and the people that he owed money for gambling. They had been aggressively calling him all day to make him pay back that money that they lent him. However, Jake did not have the money at all, and he was scared that the loan sharks were going to harm him for it. So he ran away without telling anybody where he was going, and even my grandparents didn't know where the heck he went. I tried calling him and left him multiple messages as well, but he didn't respond to either. But then, suddenly yesterday, I got a call from Jake. He told me that, well, he was hiding somewhere and he seemed scared, like his life was in danger or something. He also told me that he was going through withdrawal since he had no money to buy the drugs that he wanted. And now he's hiding. He can't contact any of his people, and I tried telling him to get a job and pay them off. Or even ask him to explain why he'd do something like this and ruin his entire future. But he just kept saying that he blamed our grandparents for it. He told me that they made life too easy for him and he did not realize that there's no backup money except for what he's been given. He sounded really spoiled at that moment, but I let it be and told him that I would contact him soon and to stay safe. I've hung up from talking to my grandparents as well, and they want me to help them get out of this mess and keep begging me to give them a place to stay, even though they're stuck in this very big mess. I feel no remorse for them, because they made life hell for me when I needed somebody to be there for me. When my parents passed, none of them did, so even though I feel like I should be helping them, I'm still going to take some time to ponder over it and see what I think after I sleep on it. Final update. Okay, so I did think on it, and I've realized that I'm not as heartless as them, so obviously I'm going to let them not be stranded on the streets, and I'm also not going to let my brother be attacked by loan sharks. I didn't want them in the house either, though, so I had to come up with a compromise or a solution. There was no way that they could stay with me in Noah, and I also did not have money to give them, or to give to those loan sharks. That was the only way that I could get them the house back, but unfortunately, I don't have that kind of money. Even if I did, I would not spend it on him. Well, anyways, I came up with a solution, though, so I called my grandparents and let them know that I'd be picking them up from their house. They were super happy about the entire situation, but they weren't aware of what was about to hit them. So, when I picked them up, I ignored them throughout the entire car ride, even when they kept asking me questions about my house. The one that they thought they were going to be living in, and I stayed quiet. I spoke to them when we reached the old age home. As soon as they saw the sign above the gate, their eyes widened in shock and an angry expression took over their face. They turned to me and started demanding that I don't put them in this house and take them to my house instead. They didn't want to go in, but there was no way I was taking care of them. I reminded them of every single thing that they did to me, every single feeling that they let me feel when I stayed with them, and then I told them that I was dropping them off for adoption, just like they wanted to do with me. If they thought I wasn't a part of this family for all these years, there's no way I was about to treat them like family. It was a feat dropping them off. They kept screaming and begging me to take them to the house, but I turned my back on them. They weren't my grandparents and they never would be. My next stop was the police station, where I gave them my brother's address and told them everything that he's been doing. He's rotting in jail, but he's not mad about it. He knows that even though this is part of my punishment towards him for abandoning me, I'm also keeping him behind bars to protect him from the loan sharks who want to kill him. However, I made it very clear that whatever happens next is not my responsibility, because there's no way I've forgiven him yet. He doesn't deserve my forgiveness unless he suffers the same way I did, feeling alone and unwanted. Okay guys, so the comment section, I would say about 50% of the comments was definitely on OP's side, but they were saying how OP should not have taken the grandparents to the old retirement home. OP should have gave them a place to stay, looked out for them, but there was other people arguing saying no, the grandparents straight up disowned OP and didn't want anything to do with OP. So I want to know your thoughts, guys. Say for instance you were in OP's position and you were asked for help by the grandparents. Would your reaction be the same as OP's? Let me know. Drop your comments down below, guys. Thank you for joining me on today's video. My name's Mr. Reddito. If you guys are new to the channel, welcome. I narrate stories every single day. Similar stories, it could be dramas of mother-in-law stories, neighborhood disputes, cheating stories. I mean, we really cover it all. If you guys want daily videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'll see you tomorrow, and remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.